So today I want to talk about what it is like to have an EV. Side light deo na yaar, Pandus. I really thought that car was gonna go right. What it is like to have an EV in Nepal, and talk about some not issues, but just concerns I had about range when I bought the car first. Driven it about 40,000 kilometers now, so I guess it's safe to say I have a decent understanding of what living day to day in Nepali traffic and highways is like with an EV. The car gives about 380 in a full charge, like at 100%, 388 to 393 to be precise. At least that's with me and my family's driving style. For others, this number can go up or down. The EV really calibrates and reflects a range estimate very unique to your driving style. So that number does fluctuate a lot. And honestly, for me, I feel like that's been enough. My car usually commutes between office, work, and home about 25 kilometers minimum across town, and sometimes it's like 50-60 in Kathmandu a day. And so at least for someone that commutes that much in the city on a daily basis, I feel like having an EV has been a good economic incentive, just because the cost of petrol, it was skyrocketing when we switched to this, and now it's become more affordable, I should say, with and without AC. We don't use AC too much, even though we have an EV. Sure, when it's like super hot or super cold, yeah, but otherwise, not really. Like, it's only when it gets too dusty and like you can smell the smog in the air. Like right now, it is it's like December in Nepal, and I feel like the climate is just okay, and it doesn't need like AC all the time. So yeah, EV wise, I feel like it's been an okay. Like, what is this guy doing? Hello, Sarji. Kahan jane aba? The things that you have to deal with in Nepal. Oh my god, this is gonna be lovely to make content. But anyway. I really don't know what that can horse. Alright, so back to talking about EVs. This is such a bottleneck. Ooh, I saw an Audi. Range-wise, EVs, this car is more than enough. Let's talk about daily commutes. I charge once in 4 or 5 days. I usually don't charge unless I'm down to like the last 50 to 100 kilometers. And it's usually an overnight charge. No, I don't have an installed 7 or 11 kilowatt charger. I just use the granny slow 2 kilowatt charger that came with the car when I bought it. And it does require a proper overnight charge, like a proper... Oh my god, what is this? Like a proper 12 to 15 hours. Usually when I plug it in between 10 to 20% and I check the estimate, it's usually 13 to 15 hours at 2 kilowatt an hour. That's the speed I get at home. and that's usually enough for the next day. If I have a long trip planned, like to Pokhara, to Chitwan, that's what I initially thought before buying the car, was where do I usually travel? What sort of roads in the city? How much distance do I cover in a day? And then when I go outside the valley, how much do I travel? I really wanted some sort of vehicle that would get me to my destination, which again, my family is different from yours in the sense we travel mainly just to Pokhara and to Chitwan for vacations, travel once or twice a year, and then we sometimes travel to the east towards Zapa, Biratnagar, but that's usually like once or twice a year, maybe sometimes, and they're usually very planned because everyone's on a tight work schedule. And so these, oh, let's go to Pokhara trips don't happen just overnight. It takes like a good 2 to 3 weeks in advance, or even a month or two in advance of like, hey, this is the dates we're going to be traveling, so I know when I need my car fully charged. Which brings me to the main point about EVs when it comes to long distance travel, is that you do not have the luxury of just traveling for fun, like just let's go to Biratnagar tomorrow and then just leave with like, I don't know, 100 km range in your tank. You can't do that. You need to pre-plan it because Nepal's charging infrastructure is just not there yet, unfortunately. But fortunately, if you have a longer range EV, it is enough. I've done trips to Ilam, Madrapur Zapa, Biratnagar, Dharan, Janakpur, Chitwan, Pokhara, and it's been more than enough. Kakarbitato. In the sense, you have to properly plan where your route is going to be, and then you have to call in advance. There are a couple of apps I use. One is an online browser called Charge Nepal, I think. I'll leave the link in the description below. And then I have PlugShare on my cell phone. PlugShare is good in the sense it has the geolocation of all the NEA DC chargers, the private chargers, other plugs if available, and there's usually a contact number you can call in advance. There's also the NEA app, which I use once in a while when I go out of Valley, and then of course Hyundai have chargers. I also use a lot of the publicly available chargers, so a big thanks to BYD and MG chargers that I've used along the highway. Kia too once. Yeah, like I plug in what I get available on these longer drives, and it's a blessing that companies at least cross-share their chargers, because you never know what car you have and what charger you'll end up with in a certain area, and when another company's charger is the only thing available in the area, you definitely want to be able to use it and not be restrained by your company's own charging infrastructure, especially if your car doesn't have as much range. So yeah, you definitely have to plan it out, like where I want to go, how much charge I need to spend. And the one thing that I have realized on longer trips about EVs is the faster you go, the more less efficient your car becomes. Like my car is super efficient till about 60 kilometers per hour, and then if I get highway stretches where I have to constantly go above 70 or 80, talking about on the east-west highway, then my efficiency drops, and it drops pretty fast. But Nepal's highway, you reach up to 50-60 and then you come down again. You reach up to 50-60, you come down again. So it's not too much of a hurdle. But I'm just saying, traveling long distances is definitely something you have to pre-plan. In the city though, it's not a worry at all. It's not a worry because if I come home from like a late night party outing at like 10-11 p.m. and I only leave for office the next day at 7 a.m., that 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. is enough time that the car will at least put in 100 km range for the next day. And I don't have any situation where I would be traveling more than 100 km There are fast DC chargers in the city if I need to, but in the 40,000 kilometers I've driven, I've never once had that situation. And so, yeah, for the city daily, day-to-day usage, it's more than enough. I think the one fear I did have when I initially had this car was that the first monsoon arrived, and I grew up at a time when voltage fluctuations were a bad thing, and I remember in my childhood, because there were like low voltage fluctuations, adapters, bigger devices would actually like short circuit sometimes if you didn't have like a volt guard, a stabilizer, and things like that. I don't think that you need to worry about it too much these days. I remember like the tube lights flickering so much and not lighting up so much that the starter on the tube lights would just fry itself out because there wasn't enough voltage or enough current coming home, and having to mend that. So in that first monsoon that I had the car, I was very anxious when it rained overnight, and that coincided with my charging, that something would happen. But I've installed like a circuit breaker before the adapter of this car, and honestly, a couple of monsoons later, I really don't mind falling asleep, even if there is heavy rain. As long as like a transformer doesn't explode near my house, I feel like I should just sleep fine. But other than that, I just come home, and when I'm down to the last 50 to 100 km, I plug it in, and then I forget about it. It's almost like charging your cell phone. Like you do it before you go to bed, and then you wake up with a full charge, and that's almost the same thought I bring to this car. I plug it in at night, straight when I get home, and then it's only tomorrow morning when I actually need the car that I actually unplug and think about it. It's that much of a no-brainer. So yeah, this does have a caveat in the sense on highways you have to wait. But here's a fun incident. Like, this was a trip I did in probably spring of 23 to Biratnagar. Obviously, Biratnagar is about 700-800 kilometers away, and there's no way a 380 km range car can reach Biratnagar in one charge. So I traveled to Bordibas, and there was a NEA fast DC charger at Bordibas. I still had I hadn't even used 1/4 of my range, but again, to get to Biratnagar, you can't use just 3/4 of 400 km and get there. That would be about 300 km range. So what I did was I had to charge it at the NEA DC charger, and they've done a pretty decent job. I'm not going to commend and say it's a great, fantastic job. It's a very new infrastructure that's just been kept in place, and so there are bugs here and there. And so, but there is like a hotline number you can reach out to, and so it's pretty okay. In the sense, it's doable. The only thing you have to be a bit anxious about is when you get to the charger, if there are other cars in line before you. Each car will take at least an hour or two to fully charge, or more, considering when they initially plug in. And so you might be spending a couple of hours yourself or more. But in my situation, I've never had that because I don't travel too much in the daytime. EVM when everyone is traveling, basically. And so what happens is, hello, are you going straight? What are you doing, bro? Anyway, what I was saying is, because of that, I haven't had any situation where I've needed to wait too long in line. And I just go and I'll have a lunch or something. By the time I get to Bordibas, it's gonna be a couple of hours from Kathmandu, so I'll just go have lunch somewhere nearby. And in this occasion, I remember I went to go have lunch with my family because it was a family trip. And the fun thing was that the NEA DC charger shows your charging percentage, how many kilowatts and how much rupees it's taking from you in real time when you leave your data on. And I remember my waiter saying, should I add more food to your plate? And I was like, wait, I'm still eating. And by that time, my car had fully charged, and it was like 35-40 minutes. So it really didn't take a lot to fill in one charge. It was almost the same situation on the way back home from Biratnagar to Kathmandu. I remember again at Bardivas charging, and by the time I'd taken a helping and considering waiting, my car, the notification, my cell phone app, the NEA Charger app had shown it was a full charge. And on the way back, it's a longer distance, so I remember I paid a bit more, about like 250 rupees, and it was, I remember, I think about only 1/3 of my charge was left. So yeah, I feel like it's okay as long as you plan it out.